When I was 8 years old, my mother married my stepfather, and I lived in a prison with them for 10 years. When we moved to Ohio, those next 2 years were a living hell. That's when they locked me in my bedroom. I was given bread and water for my food, and that was it. And my stepfather regularly physically and sexually abused me. My mother shaved off all my hair. They removed every ounce of dignity from me, and I felt useless. I felt like a piece of dirt. My stepfather, in a rage one day, decided he wanted to kill me, and he always threatened to kill me. The guns were always out. And he came up behind me with a steak knife when I had no idea, and he started pounding me on my back, and I realized that I had been stabbed. I was never taken to get medical help. I was so scared. I lived in constant terror. And the horrible thing about all of this is we had a scripture plaque on our wall from Micah 6:8 that my stepfather, this was his favorite verse. What does the Lord require of you but to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God? That made no sense to me. How could a man who claimed to know God treat me like this? What kind of God was there? I was so confused. I didn't know what was right. My own mother didn't protect me. She allowed the abuse and then became a participant of the abuse. My mother began sexually abusing me. And it made no sense to me. But in the midst of the despair, I just happened to notice a Bible that was sitting there on a bookshelf. And I have no idea why it was there. And I remember when I got to the Psalms, the person who wrote this book described the emotions of terror, fear of death that I had been experiencing. And there was just such an emotional connection with those words from the Psalms. And I remember reading that this man called out to God for help, and God rescued him. So I put God to the test. I said, God, if you're real, get me out of here. So I opened the newspaper, finally found a job I thought maybe I could do. And I started working. And the day of my first paycheck, I never came back. I had a duffel bag full of clothes that I left with, and that was it. And I've had no contact since. A huge aspect of my healing has been forgiveness. Forgiveness was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. You know, my abuse wasn't an accident. It was perpetrated by people who were supposed to love and nurture me. But I knew I had to forgive that. And God gave me this idea. I took a rock and wrote my sin of resentment, hatred, anger, rage. And I named the things she perpetrated, and I said, God, I forgive my mother of, and I filled in the blank. And I wrapped my sins up inside the cloth with her sins on it, and I buried it in the ground, and I planted a lavender plant on top of that. And I just surrendered that whole area of forgiveness to him. And to this day, I have that beautiful plant in my garden reminding me that because of God's forgiveness, I can forgive her. As I healed, God opened the doors for me to share my experience with other women, which gave me a purpose. It gave all my experiences a purpose. And we all have pain. And we can do one of two things with it. We can either keep it hidden and neglect it, or we can do something positive with it. Freedom Challenge is a way to do something positive with it. It's a way of going deeper into your own pain. It's a way of being involved and helping free others. And I had an opportunity to hike with Freedom Challenge a few years ago. And I remember taking the bus on that first day, and At one point, there was this big rock that everybody was climbing up on, but there was no way I could get up there. And my hike master said, "Come on, I'll help you up." Her and a couple other women from the team pushed me up that rock, and I got on top of it. Now, I was too chicken to stand, but I sat up on that rock, and I felt such victory. And for the first time, I saw God as more tender and more nurturing than I ever had before. And it was all because of the love of these women, the sisterhood that lives in Freedom Challenge. And it was life-changing. I saw God in a whole different light. I wanted to help rescue these women who have been trafficked or being trafficked, who have been in the same type of prisons that I've been in. I want to be a vessel to be used where I can be a part of their freedom in some aspect or another. And Freedom Challenge is a great way to be able to experience that freedom.